Hello and welcome to Starcodes Astrocast, where I talk about the month ahead. Next month this is for June 2026. In July, I'll be bringing in some guests for the second half, but this month I just want to talk about what's going on because there's so much happening, and I wanted to catch everybody up on the story. Uh, Last week, in the end of May, we had an interesting combination of Mars squared Pluto. We talked a bit about this last month, but because it happened at the end of the month, I don't think we emphasized it enough. Now, every time Mars squares Pluto, there we have an extra power. We have will, oomph, and often explosions. Now, I've noticed that Mars aspects are getting a bit more intense now that Mars disposes Neptune and Saturn, who are both now in Aries, and will be Saturn for several years, Neptune for over a decade. And so Mars has an extra power in its aspects because they move pretty fast. Mars goes around the zodiac a little over a year and a half. So it's going to hit everything off briefly but intensely. Last week, as Mars squared Pluto, we saw the Ebola outbreak expand rapidly, and I want to talk about the first bit of that because that's also a really interesting chart. But we also had explosions in Southern California, in Texas, in Iran, in India, I believe. Now, around the world, not everybody's house exploded. Nothing exploded at my house, but I could feel the tempers cooking. And so you want to can notice when those aspects happen, just play it a little extra safe. These are not aspects to talk about the the inevitability of bad luck. But when you see a tough aspect coming up or a positive aspect, how do you work with it to direct it? Think of it like a river that needs a place to flow. So being physically active helps exhaust the energy, so you're using that to good use. It was a great week to build um, a rock wall, or to do something, take on a physical challenge. We went camping and we did it safely, but we did come back to our garage having been perused by a bear. So that extra muscle that Mars Pluto can give us. So we want to keep an eye on that. I wanted to bring back the Ebola epidemic, which is, we have lots of political commentary on why it's so dangerous at the moment and why we have not taken a good look at this before. But I've noticed that there are some aspects that are contiguous with this. At the time, this is the first person that was identified, the first identified patient and patient's death. Again, the death was not identified as Ebola right away because it's a new variation of it. We think it came from bats, but we're still working on it. It's a new variation on it, so it exploded rapidly because people didn't know to take care in the situation, and people handled the bodies. We see Mercury, Mars, Saturn, and Neptune all within 11 degrees of each other, 12 degrees of each other. And that, when you have that much firepower, all in Aries, all feeling like exploding, there was extra oomph behind it. The sun was also flaring, which tends to add extra volume to whatever the aspects are. So I would say that this looks like a real challenge. Now, this summer, we're going to be seeing 4 planets at 4 degrees, between 4 and 5 degrees in mid-July. One of those pieces will Jupiter at the end of this month. Jupiter moves into Leo and will be opposing Pluto for most of the summer. I've noticed that Jupiter opposed Pluto can liberate some power issues because they act on each other. So Jupiter expands and it shares with the world and broadcasts. Jupiter is the largest planet, bigger than all the other planets put together. So Jupiter expands, but as it opposes Pluto, one of the things that can expand is death. Jupiter was opposed Pluto at the last Ebola outbreak. And this is something we see again. Most of the world was safe. But when we see that, we'll look for where is it going to be lots of Pluto. which can be transformation and a powerful time for us to move beyond life and death and do great meditation on the nature of the impermanence of existence. It can bring power to the more expansive or liberal party, but it can also look at an expanded misuse of power. It's always up to us how we play with these symbols. You can imagine like all the attributes you can imagine for Jupiter, all the attributes you can imagine for Pluto, and they can combine any of those ways. You get to help direct it. And this is why I see astrology is not about the nature of fate, but how do we work with it and use it to help our world become the best it can be and help our own lives become the best we can be. So we see that we come back to June 1st. And how does June begin? June begins, of course, always in Gemini, but with Uranus now conjunct the sun in Gemini, or just pulling away from that conjunction. Venus is moving into a conjunction with Jupiter. Often considered the best time to get married is around a positive Jupiter-Venus aspect because it means lots of love. It also can mean lots of attachment. And I see Jupiter-Venus conjunction, which will be happening early in the month. And it will be on June 9th. And we have a chart to look at. But when they conjunct, we see people's turn up the volume on their love and their desire to be in relationship. That can also mean it increases the incel activity and anger that we're not in the relationship we want to be in. So I'd say dial back the expectations and sit with how can you grow all the love in your life? How can you bring that fertility to your garden, to your care? So the Venus-Jupiter conjunction is moving into that. There's a lot of love, but people will be touchy because it's in Cancer about any sign of rejection. So love with reassurance, love with safety can really blossom here. And as the month begins, Mars in Taurus is strong and determined. It's pulling away from that square to Pluto in Aquarius, but it gives us steadiness. Now, Mars doesn't necessarily like being in Taurus, which is a Venus-ruled sign, but it's steady and it's not always clear about what the problem is. You might have to dig a bit if you're in an argument with somebody, and know this, that the people get deeply stubborn. That doesn't mean they're not open-minded, and they may be less flammable than they could be at some other time. But listen in to how you can support the process. And when they get stubborn, kind of keep asking questions about what will help the situation grow and heal. Mars and Venus sextile, again, can really help any of our relationships, from our dog to our turtle to our partner to our parents. It needs just steadiness and support and connection. So now I'm going to take this on to June 9th, which is an interesting timeline here. On June 9th, when the moon is in Aries, conjunct Neptune, which is just a monthly brief kind of excitement and confusion. We'll see Venus and Jupiter exactly conjunct, which can be full of that love and expectations, but this wants love and connection and security. This wants independence. So notice that you're having to make sure that it's a spacious relationship and there's room to grow with this, which is so helpful. And then we have on this process here, there also Mercury squaring Saturn. Now, Mercury square Saturn, I have found in the charts of many people who finish books. They finish advanced degrees. It gives us mental stick-to-itiveness. And when our mind wants to hold on and not let go. Now, that can be great if we have a project to put our brains into around June 9th. If we don't, it can be really annoying dinner conversation where someone just grabs onto a point and won't let go. But it is a good time to choose carefully where you put your mental tractor beam, to look at meta-analysis, notice your thinking, the quality of your thinking, where you're going with it, what you've chosen to do with your brain. And we want to take that and move that forward. So we see then on June 16th, there's going to be the middle of June has a lot of emotional aspects. It could be great for new relationships, but it's going to be one of everything. But I would ask us to just notice that emotional stability that's needed during this time, because Venus will be hitting that degree that sets off the summer's pattern. Venus in Leo will be uh, it will be sextiling Uranus. It will be trining Neptune. It'll be opposing Pluto and then moving into a trine with Saturn. So there's one of every possible emotion that can come up. It's a great time for um, any heart-led work and political work. It's a great time for any creative collaboration. It's an interesting time in romance. Just expect one of everything to come up. And if someone's moods change quickly, try to understand where they're coming from rather than deal with the whiplash of, your Venus opposed Pluto. No, your Venus trine Neptune. It's all of those feelings will be real. You will get honestly mixed messages. But it stays kind of nice and juicy in through there. We'll see that Venus enters Leo on June 13th, and it goes from Cancer into wanting more emotional display, wanting more romance, and asking you not to take that for granted. Then, we have those straight opposite apples. June 17th is when Venus opposes Pluto, and that can be a time when we have to deal with loss because it's right at the end of that. So I would say do not do anything drastic. Do not make major emotional decisions to leave or to jump in a relationship, but sit on it, chew on it, feel it, explore it. But, let the dust die down before any long-term decisions are made. Then we have the summer solstice on June 21st, and this will be at 2:25 a.m. that the sun heads on Mountain Time for the sun heading into Cancer, and the beginning of summer, the first moment. When we hit the solstices and the equinox, it can feel like a door is opening. The energy comes up. It's the highest moment. That'll be the shortest night all year, and that we can sit and savor that moment. It'll hang out there roughly 3 days, so we don't see much change. The sun holds still at that degree, and we get ready to move forward. Mars will still be in Taurus, and that day the moon will be in Virgo and asking us to kind of clean up our act. We see that it will be in a tight trine to Mars as the summer begins, just suggesting we do good actions to see what we can do to improve our world, to heal. It'll keep an eye on all health issues and the power dynamics around health for the summer. Then on June 25th, a few days later, the sun moves into that square with Neptune because it'll be beginning to set off those. Every time the moon changes sign, sun changes sign, it's going to hit off all those planets that are hovering between for 3 to 5 degrees this summer. And you'll feel it resonating. So the sun squares Neptune on June 25th. Then Mars sextiles Jupiter on June 27th. If you haven't got, if it's a good time to hammer out the details of an argument, to hammer out the details of a contract, an agreement, or just some minor disagreement, but doing it with not levity, but openness and really listening as much as you speak and working things through in a good way. Mars enters Gemini on June 28th, but say June 28th and 29th, we're going to see some major astrological shifts as we see Jupiter heads into Leo while it's going to be on the full moon on the 29th. It'll be the full moon in Capricorn. While Jupiter heads into Leo, Mars heads into Gemini, and Mercury retrogrades at 11:35 a.m. On Mountain Time that morning. Now, we want to check that out. What can you do that morning that uh, that whole week before to get ready for Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde in the summer is not bad. It's a time when we can sit back and tell old stories and not really step out of time and step into being with one another. But just notice that there will be logistical difficulties, particularly as Mercury retrogrades and then 3 weeks later as Mercury turns direct. But use this time to go into the past, to reconnect with roots, to be part of the heart, and to revisit old and dear places. Just keep your schedule loose, keep a good book on you on your Kindle, and on your phone, and work through what you can. Notice that a lot of old issues will be coming up to be dealt with during that time, and I think we're going to see a lot of political commentary on what's happened. I think we're going to see a lot of noticing the ramifications of our actions for good or ill, and ramifications of major political decisions. We're getting ready for that mid-June time of when all the planets are at the same degree and resonating. It's very hard to break down a pattern where you see that much happening at once. So you can't say, oh, this is happening, but then the next day that's happening, because it's like an auto harp chord. They're all ringing off each other. And it's a really interesting pattern. We'll talk more about that next week, what each of those degrees means and how to work with those imagery. If you know how to work with the symbols of each degree of each sign, it's well worth checking it out. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful, safe month. Uh, again, keep the heart involved, work with stubbornness and all the positive attributes of it, and find ways for the heart to unfold, particularly in the middle of the month. Keep an eye on big, flammable, long-term issues, and take care, and I will see you next month.